After spending a fun night with friends, this group of boys discovers a tarot deck, and believing that they can mock destiny, they decide to read their fortunes, without knowing that within those cards are their worst demons, and fighting against them could come to be the only chance they have to survive, thanks to a dark secret that lies within the tarot. If you want to see the story of these guys saving their lives, then keep watching the video. This story begins with this boy named Paxton reflecting on how great it is to spend time outdoors with his friends. But when he started to get too philosophical, his friend Liz threw something at him to remind him that they actually rented a mansion so they could have a good time with each other and celebrate her birthday. After that, we are introduced to the rest of the group, Grant, Haley, Paige, Madeline, and Lucas, who start playing to guess things about their future. But everything gets awkward because when everyone predicts that Haley and Grant will be the ones who get married first, the couple distances themselves because they have just broken up because they are too different, which leads to the realization that they drank all the alcohol. Since there is no fun without alcohol and it seems that there are no convenience stores in Australia, they start searching the house in case they find more drinks, until they find a closed basement with signs not to enter. Obviously, the boys break the lock and find astrology and divination tools, along with an old hand-painted tarot deck, and as Haley sees her curious friends, she explains to them that tarot can read signs similar to normal astrology. Only in this case are you linked to a card instead of a constellation, and this card serves as the basis for interpreting your fortune, but clarify that each deck is personal and very dangerous to use someone else's deck, although you still end up accepting it because Ellis decided that if cirrhosis of the liver isn't going to kill her on her birthday, at least it will make her see her future. In the case of Ellis, the main reading is based on the inverted priestess, which means a crushing blow. As finding out about that seemed funny, Madeline offers to do the next one, receiving the letter from the hanged man who surrenders to his fate, making things go wrong, advising her that the best way to escape is not to run and face things as they are. As Paxton forgets his balls in the bathroom and takes the opportunity to close the front door, Paige receives the letter from the magician that will make her fall into several deceptions while she feels that everything is going in two directions, and since she does not like her horoscope, she sends Paxton, who gets the inverted jester, which means he must stop acting on impulse without listening to his friends because it is his loved ones who will make him see the best in himself, while Lucas gets the hermit inverted, whose flashlight always guides wrong and increasingly dangerous changes, especially in love, so he must face his fears instead of going alone where he sees the light. In the end, it is Grant's turn to get the devil's card with a sign of the bad path he is taking, based on destroying before understanding, and if he wants to cut that off, he must make a sacrifice before losing what is most important to him. Although this reading was one of the most entertaining, since it was his ex-girlfriend who told him his truths, he tells her that she only invents fortunes to make fun of others and then leaves from there. Since there is no one to tell the future to, Haley reads her own fortune, understanding that her excessive love will lead her to death, and since that killed all the enthusiasm of the night, the group puts away the cards and goes to bed, not realizing that the power of the cards has just been activated. The next morning, everyone prepares to go home, while listening to Paxton's horror podcast, until Lucas interrupts them for having won $700, causing some to detour to continue the party, while Haley returns to home to take a bath and talk for a while with Paige, until her attic opens by itself, and although she tries to ignore it, several noises make her believe that someone had entered, so she starts to investigate, and when she sees that her attic opens again, opening up, she takes a look at the place without realizing that she is being stalked by a hooded woman. Believing it to be a joke, the girl invites her friends to get out of there while the lights flicker, and when she takes another look, hundreds of candles and inverted crosses appear next to her tarot card. While listening again to the priestess's warning reversed, and when she picks up the tarot card, after falling from the attic, Elise tries to reach for her cell phone to ask for help, but the crazy woman throws the ladder at her several times, ending her life. The authorities notify the friends of the accident, who begin to cry for Elise for a while before Lucas takes Madeline home. Haley asks Paige not to feel guilty for not being with Elise because her mother's death from cancer weighs on her efforts to save herself, and her interest in tarot taught her that destiny cannot be changed no matter what you do. So there is no point in clinging to what cannot be, recommending that you accept things as they come. After making sure that his friend is safe, Lucas walks towards the subway back home while a hooded figure chases him. But the young man tries to ignore her until, upon reaching the empty station, the lights begin to fail and the hermit is shown in front of him. Although he listens to the tarot's warnings, the boy decides to run towards the illuminated area of the station without realizing that he has entered the maintenance tunnels, where a newspaper appears announcing his death and makes him hide in one of the train cars. But since the hermit scares him, he ends up jumping towards a moving train. The next morning, Grant comforts Haley about what happened to Elise when the police call them to question about their friend's death. And since they don't want to give them information, they decide to stay together to avoid more victims. And after a couple of Paxton's stupidity, Haley relates the deaths with her tarot predictions. And although Grant explains how stupid it sounds, the others begin to believe that anyone can be next. So they start researching tarot specialists who can help them. And since the name that is repeated the most is Alma Astrom and she had already solved a case related to deaths and predictions, they obviously try to call her. But since everyone knows that psychics cannot come at all, it is better to visit her in her cabin at half of the forest to tell them their nonsense. And although at first she does not listen to them, after guessing that they had read their fortune with some hand-painted cards that were kept in a small wooden box with a symbol of the zodiac, she invites them in. With everyone gathered, the old story is that the first time the deck appeared in America was in 1951 in Mexico City, when 6 people died after having their wedding fortune read, losing track of it until 1969. Where 8 people suffered the same thing, the next time being in 1988 in London, where Alma had gone with her friends to spend the weekend, and as she read fortunes for everyone except herself, her friends died. But by the time she realized that the tarot was to blame, the deck had already disappeared, so she published her story and sought to make a name for herself, in order to find the deck and destroy it. As Grant still does not believe that the deck whatever caused everything, Alma tells us that in 1798, a Hungarian count asked a fortune teller nicknamed the astrologer to look into the future for his son. But since the cards of fate were not in his favor, the astrologer saw that the destiny of his wife and son was to die. After asking for details about how his son would die to avoid it, the count asked her to shuffle the deck several times until a good fortune came out, but they could never come up with anything different, so the fortune teller and her daughter were banished to the outskirts in the hope of moving the destination somewhere else. Obviously, this did not work, and as the count's intelligence became clear, he blamed the astrologer and had her daughter hanged for witchcraft. As critical panic was also not popular at the time, the woman cursed the count's fortune and used her life to seal the curse on the deck so that everyone who tried to see his fortune would end up dying. Since the die was already cast for everyone, the only way they could change destiny is to completely destroy the deck and everything related to it so that the curse is lost. So the friends return to the car on the way to look for the deck. And as Grant kept saying that none of that makes sense, Madeline shows her prediction about the hanged man, making the car stop suddenly. And although the prediction told her that to change her destiny she should face it instead of running away, a silhouette of a hanged man drawn on the window makes her run to escape from the entity. While she was followed by Haley, and although at first it seemed that the hanged man was going to attack those who stayed in the car, in the end he decides to chase Madeline and hang her, taking advantage of the fact that she ran far from anyone who could help her, and by the time everyone arrives, the hanged man leaves them to their friend behind. The shock of what just happened to him erases Paxton's brain. So when he hears the plan to burn the deck, he decides that it is best to go and lock himself in his room. And although his friends remind him that the prediction warned him that to save himself, he should stop being stubborn, he goes to his room to protect himself. On the way to the university, Paxton begins to hear laughter everywhere, making him run to his building so he can stay with the security guard. But to his bad luck, when the clown shows up, the security guard has already left the reception alone, so he runs to the elevator. While the clown mocks, approaching little by little on each floor, and when he makes him believe that he would free him because the elevator managed to close, Grant tries to call Paxton, but since he stopped answering, they leave him for dead and go to the mansion. But since none of them know how to break curses, and when searching on Google, they realize that there are several groups and subgroups of curses, they choose to think simply and burn the cards in the fireplace, but obviously the cards were bewitched so that they could not be incinerated. The friends call Alma in the hope that they can destroy the cards, so she begins to do a ritual in which she invokes the soul of the astrologer to capture it and be able to destroy the cards. But when they manage to make her present, the old woman is controlled by the astrologer to read her own fortune, breaking her circle of protection and taking it to be executed in a manner identical to her chart. Everyone runs away, and by accident, Paige ends up in a different room, and while a ghost drives her friends away, It guides her to a light bulb that explodes, leaving her blind, so that in the midst of her fear, she flees to a stage where the magician is putting on a show, tying her so that she cannot escape. But the girl does not give up and hides in a box, without realizing that the magician planned to do the sawed woman trick. Believing that she will no longer live, Haley confesses that she read in the cards that they were not meant to be together, but she agreed to go out with him anyway to change her destiny, which gives her the idea to use the curse of the cards to dictate the astrologer's destiny and thus make her destroy herself with the cards. And even though it's not the best idea, they decide it's worth trying. Grant decides to cut the bullshit and supports her. So when the ghost of the woman chases Haley downstairs and starts hanging her, the guy decides to sacrifice himself and fight while she gets the deck. The bastard doesn't last long in the fight, so Haley rushes to read the crazy woman's fortune, revealing that her hatred would end up leading to her death if she clung to the grudge. And since her zodiac doesn't pay attention to her, she causes the deck to be shuffled, consumes it, destroying the curse just at the same time that Grant faced his demons and came to save her, breaking the curse once and for all. The couple prepares to walk home together when we see Paxton come pick them up. Yes, it turns out that his roommate ruined Paxton's execution because his fortune said that he was always alone, and since after that he remembered that the tarot said that he could only find the best in him by reflecting his best version with his friends and risking to save them in exchange for his fate, he ended up breaking his curse. And that's how this movie ends. We have reached the end of this video. I hope you liked it and that you tell me what other movie or series you would like me to summarize. For my part, this has been all. I hope you liked the video and that you share it with someone who you think might like it. If you find the content interesting, don't forget to subscribe and activate the bell. See you soon.